What's up, y'all? It's Mondell Robinson with Black Male Voter Project, and I'm out here every day fighting for an America that I believe in, America that will work for all of us. And I have the audacity to believe that with the President Kamala Harris, we might get some help in making that happen. It might be possible for us to get that happen. But what I really want to know is what you're out here fighting for. What matters the most to you? So here's what I want you to do. Make one of these videos and tell me what you're fighting for. Record that video in selfie format and then put the hashtag "when we fight, we win." Share it with me. And we're going to make so much noise, it's going to be impossible for them to ignore us.
Welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. And lots on the agenda. First and foremost, I don't know what the heck Orange is talking about this morning. He says, let me find out you have a picture with Lauren Boebert. That will never, ever happen. But nonetheless, or Marjorie, or any of the others for that matter. But we got a lot to talk about this morning. Of course, the question is not whether or not North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson is a sellout. It's just the question becomes why and to what extent, what really is driving his outlandish attempts to out Trump, to out KKK, the KKK. What is really behind all this? Well, we have some insights we're going to share this morning, but I really want to jump to this story first. We have a couple of other things. I mean, violent crime has decreased according to the latest FBI statistic. Nobody believes it, though. Nobody believes that. There's going to be a black soap opera that's going to debut on CBS. In fact, it's debuting this week. And it's an all-black soap opera on CBS television. But first and foremost, we have to get to this execution that is about to take place tonight, this evening. Marcellus Williams has now asked the U.S. Supreme Court to stay his execution based on newly disclosed admissions by the trial prosecutor that he removed at least one black prospective juror based on his race. St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney Wesley Bell has confessed constitutional error in Williams's case based on the new evidence of racial bias during jury selection, among other issues. Williams is scheduled to be executed in Missouri, and that is not the only thing. So you say, okay, prosecutorial error with the jury. That is to try and get the courts. So they needed that legal language to try and get the courts to say, hey, wait a minute, there was an error, so we can't go through with this. But there are bigger issues. It's harder to say, okay, he didn't do it and get them to stay the execution. And here's why he didn't do it. It's that still, without this constitutional language, there is really not a whole lot of fight you have left. It's unfortunate. It's just the way the criminal injustice system works in the United States. However, there has been overwhelming evidence of Marcellus Williams's innocence. And yet the governor of Missouri, a Republican governor, has decided to not issue a stay. State Supreme Court also has sided with the governor. They want an innocent man to die. So they are leaving it now up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And who's who has come out. I mean, you name them. And listen, let's set aside the black celebrities and black power brokers who have come out. And of course, the Innocence Project is really pushing this. But Richard Branson took out full page ads in the Kansas City Star and other newspapers calling on the stay of this execution, calling for it to be put off, to be canceled. You have other non-black entrepreneurs, non-black citizens saying this is wrong. And yet we are only hours away from Marcellus Williams being executed for a crime that apparently he did not commit. Now, we talked last week a little bit about this in another execution that took place in South Carolina last Friday. The difference between that execution and this, and they went through with that execution, is that in that case, there was no disputing of certain evidence that the young man in South Carolina, in fact, had bragged about the murder. You had, in that case, a friend who was doing time decided to all of a sudden, all these years later, say, "No, I did it, not him." And so that is not to excuse it, but it's a lot more excusable than this. There is no excuse for this execution to take place when you listen to all the facts. The NAACP, of course, the Innocence Project, again, as always got to give big props to the Innocence Project, taking on cases that most attorneys have not taken on and will not take on, and in large part because of the cost of fighting a death row case. But at the evidentiary hearing on a motion to vacate in the circuit court last month, the trial prosecutor in this case, on the witness stand, testified under adversarial process for the first time in the case's history, and admitted that he had struck a juror because he was Black. He proclaimed that part of the reason for his strike was because he looked just like Marcellus Williams. They all look alike. And then he says it was not necessarily the full reason he thought that the trial prosecutor had struck this potential juror. He says not only did they look alike, they look like brothers. And so the Innocence Project is asking the Supreme Court to consider this newly discovered evidence of racial bias in jury selection. And they say that warrants reopening his federal habeas corpus proceedings. So they're doing their best. They're fighting to the end. And hopefully there is no end of this apparently innocent man's life this evening in Missouri. That is a huge, huge, huge miscarriage of justice that is carrying out, is being carried out before our very eyes. And so we'll see what happens. Folks, I don't know how much you know about this case, but it's something that, again, you're having now business people and others, of course, celebrities, take out ads in newspapers and urging people to call Governor Parsons at 417-373-3400 to urge him to stop this execution. And as of last night, the calls were reportedly overwhelming that number. You know, you usually don't get busy signals today. Remember back in the day, some might be too young to remember busy signals. But apparently that's what's been happening here as they have flooded, and rightfully so, that 417-373-3400 number. Governor Parsons is a complete MAGA Republican. Yes, Orangey, is no question about it. And so we're going to keep a close eye on this. Obviously, we talked about it last week, talking about it today. Marcellus Williams, listen, overwhelmingly, even the state prosecutor has jumped on the bandwagon, saying that this man should not be executed. I mean, what is enough for these judges? How and these governors? How cold-hearted can you be? And people say, how do they sleep at night? I tell you, they sleep like babies. These are heartless, gutless individuals. And that's just the bottom line. But Marcellus Williams, again, we told you the number. If the mood hits you, call it up as well. The more calls, the merrier, the Innocence Project says. But this man apparently, by all accounts, should not be in the electric chair tonight. 417-373-3400. And you see the wording there. They're urging you to tell them, do not let Governor Parsons put this man to death, an innocent person. Again, they had their constitutional, legal constitutional argument that should have stopped the execution at the very least. At the very least, had that sentence reduced to life in prison, at the very least. But really, this man deserves a new trial. Michelle Madison says she's definitely going to call. Power 96 says they sleep just like their ancestors did when they had a picnic after they lynched a black person. And then you can envision that. You can envision that today, that Governor Parson and those judges who rejected the Innocence Project and the evidence, more importantly, you can imagine, they'll go somewhere and have some champagne or something together. And you wonder, it's a political time in this country. It's an election time. But you wonder if the president, the vice president, and even the other side, the Republican nominee and his vice president nominee, you wonder, would at some point today, if no other reason, to gain some political points, to say, okay, Governor, you got to do something here. Supreme Court, you got to do something here. You got to stop this. And of course, we know that the Supreme Court is in Donald Trump's back pocket. So it's pretty, I'm convinced that if he made the call, they would stop this immediately. David Youngwell says Parsons will send postcards. This is one of the more outrageous executions we will have seen since the Jim Crow era. And based on all of the evidence that have been provided, it would be among the worst. So, folks, we'll keep an eye on that, and I'm pretty sure many of you will as well. Now, turning our attention, speaking of North Carolina, now Barrington had sent a text message earlier. I went to look for this, and I found that he was absolutely correct. Among the many things with Mark Robinson alleged to have from that pornographic site that he was perusing and leaving comments, that he had an affair with his wife's sister. I mean, wow. Yeah, David, just to conclude that last segment, he says, you and I know that his innocence is not the determining factor. Exactly. And it's really pathetic. But North Carolina, let's talk about Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson's bid for to become governor of North Carolina. His bid, folks, is nothing short of a political and moral flashpoint. Ignites outrage from Black folks and others who see his actions very peculiar if not just an outright betrayal. Who is this guy? He's a man who has openly denigrated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., referred to himself as a black Nazi, and shockingly, he stated that he wished slavery could return so he could own some slaves. Robinson has positioned himself as one of the most controversial figures in recent American politics. The pressing question, though, is what drives an African-American man to align himself with a movement like MAGA, one that has historically undermined and oppressed Black voices? What drives this man to go all in, to put all his cards on the table and basically not on one knee, but two knees for Donald Trump and that movement? Well, we did some digging. Other than Senator Raphael Warnock, who called Robinson the other day white supremacy in blackface. Did some digging and realized something really interesting. First and foremost, very surprising that he has a African-American wife. Very surprising about that. I know that didn't take a whole lot of digging. And to go home to your wife and your Black kids and say, after publicly saying, I wish that slavery would come back. There is something inherently mentally disturbing about Mark Robinson. But then there's more. It's all about the dollar bill, y'all. Dollar bill. Y'all remember that? Maybe I'm just older. But he and his wife have filed bankruptcy at least 3 times in the last 15 or so years. 3 times. And just to put that in perspective, bankruptcy usually is a process, and it clears, for the most part, your debt, and you have to pretty much 7 to 10 or 11 years, 7 to 11 years, somewhere in that vicinity. You got to kind of back off of credit and all that other stuff. You're pretty much shot for 7 to 11 years. But once that time period, whatever type of bankruptcy you filed, okay, now you get a fresh start. 3 times in 15 years. But not only that, his wife has also faced her share of issues. In fact, there is, she's on the hook, Yolanda Hill, for her nonprofit called Balanced Nutrition Incorporated, which was closed because of a federal investigation into the mismanagement of government funds. And then they found that she was, from that nonprofit, she was taking a 6-figure salary. And there has been past financial troubles. In fact, she's on the hook to the government for more than $130,000 or so. So we get in the picture that they started to play this role, this MAGA role, because 3 bankruptcies in less than 20 years. She's on the hook. He's on the hook for debt. Because if she's on it, that means he's on it. But he has his own set of financial issues. It's a grift, folks. It is a major grift. The fact that she goes along with this, you know that saying, I can do bad all by myself? Well, somebody needs to read her that book. Somebody really did, because again, the postings, along with all this they're mired in financial disaster, really, to the point where they have to bow down and kiss the ring and become the most infamous of sellouts, that they are so manipulated. Somebody said, I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. And this is exactly what Robinson and his wife are doing, living on their knees. And North Carolina apparently now is starting to see through it. And you know how we've seen video after video, confirmation after confirmation, how the MAGA folks really do feel about people of color, especially someone as dark as the Robinsons, as dark-skinned as the Robinsons. And so this idea, we've talked a lot in the past about the Candace Owenses of the world and her grift, and then the idiocy of Byron Donalds and Tim Scott, and of course the sad and pitiful life of Clarence Thomas. Austin is quoting Dr. King. He says, a man or woman can't ride your back unless it's bent. And doesn't that apply here? Doesn't that apply here? And this is a guy, again, 3 times bankruptcy. Now, of course, Trump can relate to that because I think the courts recently revealed in his trials, his civil trials anyway, that he filed bankruptcy no less than 11 times. So certainly Trump can relate. But there we go. This is how upset things can be. This is how upset things get around here. I'm dropping my own camera, knocking into my own camera. We in trouble now. I'm gonna have to go to another camera. So we're gonna have to pick up the other camera here, folks. I apologize, but oh God. Absolutely insane here. But Robinson, again, has taken advantage of social safety nets. And yet he goes against others getting any type of public assistance. The war on poverty, he's called a pander employee. Can you imagine that? Imagine that. This is, again, so you wonder why a Black man would go through these lengths to this extent. He's condemned in his speeches on a regular basis those who don't take responsibility for their financial circumstances, while he's totally ignored his own reliance on these bankruptcy protections. He's against student loan relief, while he himself benefited from it. It is the contradiction that makes it so wild for people like himself and Byron Donalds, Tim Scott. This is not just a sellout, folks. This guy has weaponized his identity, his Blackness, as a tool for self-advancement, denigrating the civil rights heroes who paved the way for his political rise. There was a great segment of the old Jackie Gleason show, The Honeymooners, where Ralph and Alice talks about men. Ralph says, if it wasn't for men, there wouldn't be this, there wouldn't be that. And Alice responds, there would be, she was happy he took men took responsibility, to finally hear a man take responsibility for the state of the world. And then he goes on to say that Christopher Columbus discovered America, who was a man. And Alice says there would be no Christopher Columbus if it wasn't for Christopher Columbus's mother. Well, Robinson doesn't understand there would be no lieutenant governor's job for him if it wasn't for Shirley Chisholm. If it wasn't for folks like Andrew Young, folks like Maynard Jackson. Dr. Nicole says once he loses the election as he better, then he should just fade away into obscurity. We have enough distractions in this world as it is. Yeah, and the thing about so she makes that point, and the thing about that too is that that's probably what he realizes anyway, and so he becomes more. He tries to out MAGA in order to try and win that election because he knows that it's all over. It's all over for him. This guy, who's going to align themselves with him? Certainly, if he loses and Trump loses, it's a wrap for this guy. It's a complete wrap. He has nowhere to turn. And I don't want to hear this idea. Listen, we know Black folks are the most forgiving. We know that. But I don't want to hear this idea of him back at the barbecue. I don't want to hear it. You know, I mean, I remember a few years ago with Omarosa. Remember Robin Robbins said, "Bye, Felicia." She been working though. She been working her way back to that barbecue. She actually has exerted herself. And folks say, "Oh, give Omarosa a break. Give her a break." I cannot envision the same thing for Mark Robinson. Maybe his wife has a chance. Maybe. But I can't see it for him. I see no future whatever. I think, Judas killed himself. Judas Iscariot. He had nowhere to turn. He had nowhere else to turn. There's nobody going to embrace him on either side. He knew he messed up in the worst of ways. Power 96 says, "Not this black man." He says in all caps like he's Donald Trump. "Not this black man." He says, "I don't forget or forgive." But it's true. Y'all know it's true. I mean, look, I say about myself. Folks have done stuff and okay, whatever. If they apologize, I'm done. Even, I'm good. We all right. Even when they haven't apologized, I've tried to. Then there's some, and you know who you are. But the thing with Mark Robinson, the bottom line with Mark Robinson is that it really is pathetic that we have individuals like that who see this particular type of grift and they become worse than the original oppressor. And this guy has, in a lot of ways, made Byron Donalds' comment about better off in Jim Crow. He's made that seem kind of calm or tame compared to the things that he's been saying, the things he's been doing. The whole slavery thing, really, that he and his weird and his depraved ways. That one, it was the one that really took a person out. Now, there's a lot. And Greer and I was talking about this yesterday. A lot of distractions, a lot of things going on. Not a lot of talk anymore about Project 2025. and in part due to people like Mark Robinson. But it's important that folks understand that Project 2025, again, it's real. It's been happening, and it will go into full-fledged mode if MAGA succeeds in November. And Power 96 says he's on Michael Eric Dyson right now. He's getting flamed, and rightly so. He says this is nasty work. But, I'll say this, RNG. Anybody who put any stock, and I know a lot of people had for years, but anybody who put any stock into Michael Eric Dyson, they were bound to be disappointed. They were very much on that road to disappointment. So it's no surprise that Power 96 says he's gone MAGA Billy. So it's no surprise. But again, Project 2025, we see the affirmative action go by the wayside already. We've seen the Freedom Fund be dismantled, basically, and now has to be revamped. Of course, we all know about Roe v. Wade. That was all Project 2025. These things that Trump bragged about, and folks are seemingly letting the former president off the hook when it comes to his association with Project 2025. He is the architect, basically, of Project 2025. And I say that because all of them, just about every single one of the authors of Project 2025 answered or answers to Donald J. Trump. Fearless Fund. I say Freedom Fund. Thanks, Mike B, for correcting me on that. Fearless Fund down in Atlanta. But Project 2025 has been, we had the Diddy news. We've had all this other that folks keep talking about, and they stopped talking about Project 2025. They talked about, we brought that story yesterday, Janet Jackson joining that ignorant bandwagon of she's not Black. Why does that even matter? I mean, listen, they can put a Vietnamese midget against Donald Trump. It seems like he would be more qualified, regardless of race. And why does it matter that Kamala Harris's dad is Jamaican or not? He is Jamaican, he's Black. But why does that matter? I've said this before, it's not to defend the vice president. As she said, it's just, she kind of blew off the question too about her race, because it's ridiculous to even talk about. But let her drive down the street, driving while Black, guarantee you, and get pulled over. She would be treated just like any other Black person. She will not get the red carpet treatment. And now she would as vice president. And maybe in some cases she wouldn't even as vice president. But the deliberate ploy by mainstream media to bury this 2025, Project 2025, and Trump's, when they say they look for evidence and they look for fingerprints, Trump's, not only is his fingerprints all over Project 2025, but his stamp of approval and his signatures all throughout it. And yes, I'm talking figuratively. Mike V says Plessy versus Ferguson determined her race. But these distractions, and I'm gonna say this too, about the vice president. There was a story that came out last night, and it's not. It is about her campaign, but it's about it's more about the Democrats and how they have run these campaigns. Vice President Harris and Tim Walz raising record amounts of money, And there is this story, and the site I had not known a lot about. And in the site, I'm pulling it up now. The site is the news site is called Notice, Notus, Notus. And the headline says Black operatives are furious over how Kamala Harris's campaign is spending money. And it's a long read, but it's an interesting read. They had a conversation with Quentin Folks, who is the deputy campaign manager, among others. And in here, Cedric Richmond is quoted here, Mignon Moore, a close advisor to the vice president. And Mignon is also the Democratic chair. Cedric goes in this article too, as well. It's about the fact that how important, of course, the Black vote is, but the money that they are not spending with not only Black-owned media, but Black operatives that can really get their messaging. And it goes on to show why. We talked about that Howard University poll, which is not accurate, but it does show, like every other poll, that there is an uptick in Black support. It's not a big uptick, but it is a small uptick in Black support for Donald Trump. This article details why. Because they have forgotten. And I'll tell you, when you read the article, here's the thing with that. Just about everybody here in that article, and the great thing about this article, we're not talking about anonymous sources. This is what I love about it. Everybody has a name to it. And here, Cedric Richmond says, everybody who says it's not about money, that's a lie. It's all about money. They're making noise, talking about Black-owned media and Black entities. They're making noise because they want money and they want a contract, and that's fair. It's fine. Cedric's only problem is that he says they should just say it. Just be upfront. He says they're right. Now, here, someone says that this does not necessarily fall on the vice president, that she inherited a system. She inherited a system that has done this. And she has actually voiced her concern about the lack of spending, real spending, with Black-owned media and Black entities, like Black folks getting out the vote. Those organizations, Tasha Brown's organizations, others, LaTasha Brown. Here, it says, and the spending or lack thereof fits into a pattern of Democrats taking the constituencies necessary to win for granted, they say. It's a little concerning. This is a quote. Now, this person didn't put his name to it, but throughout you have names. But here, this is a quote that I feel is important. It says, it's a little concerning to see that the spending is so much less, so far lower. I think it's approximately 1/4 less than what it was at this point 4 years ago. One Democratic consultant close to the Harris-Walz campaign said about Black paid media. It says, we skated by in 2020 and we're not spending at the levels we were spending at then. After spending over 70 million on paid media for Black audience in 2020, the campaign is on track to spend considerably less this time around, 2 consultants said. And then it goes on to mention that polls show that Democrats have lost significant ground with Black voters this cycle, particularly when Biden was atop the ticket. Harris's candidacy and momentum appear to have helped regain some of that support. But they are concerned that they are shooting themselves big time in the foot. Even NAACP President Derek Johnson is in this article throughout. He's prominent in this article. He apparently had a meeting with Quentin Folks about this. And according to this article, Derek Johnson walked away more angry than when he walked into that meeting. And I will say this, Roland Martin has been all over this. And I would imagine, based on this article, we'll hear a lot more from Roland Martin on this. He has been, while a he staunchly supports the vice president over Trump. There's no issues there. And he has really called these type of things out. He has really worked as hard as anybody to try and level the playing field when it comes to ad spend. We're in a campaign season, and they keep saying this is the most consequential election and the black vote is the most important. And yet we are reading this. It says in battleground states, overall black voters are going 82% for Harris. Okay, that sounds okay, right? Until you consider that in 2020, they were going 92% for Biden-Harris. And so you just gotta stop taking things for granted. And here's the thing: it's not only on the campaign. It lies heavily on the campaign, but it's also on us in the black media. We have to demand better. We have to stand up and not be afraid to call it out. We know it's a critical time for folks. We know that. We understand that what's at stake. And so you got some who are afraid to make some noise about it. But as much as they are afraid to make some noise about it, the Harris campaign should be afraid that this stuff is happening. And I know Bobby Henry, the chair of the NNPA, he watches many mornings. I don't know if he's watching this morning. But it's incumbent upon the Bobby Henrys of the world, the Benjamin Chavises of the world, to be more like the Roland Martins of the world. You got to be aggressive about this stuff because you have the power. It used to be the power of the pen, right? Because that saying used to be that we got more ink than you got dollars. Now we got the space, because that's the one thing that digital does provide you. You don't run out of space. You don't have to worry about cramming this article into the corner of the paper or anything. And according to what we have, according to what is the NNPA, 200 plus black owned newspapers and media companies. We got radio stations. We got newspapers who have radio stations. Some even have local spots on television, broadcast television. And many now have these web shows. Use that power. I mean, look, this is September 24th. The election is what? 40-something days away. What are you going to do? Wait until they say, okay, we're going to give you something? That's not happening. We see that. This article says that's not happening. Go get it. And somebody is, I think it's RNG, who is repeating a Michelle Obama quote. Yeah, it is the RNG. I watched his show yesterday, by the way. I caught it in rerun. I didn't get it live. I missed it live. But he says, remember when Michelle Obama said something to the effect of, don't be mad if someone doesn't reach out to you? And he says, and this is really curious. He says, I thought that was a swipe at the black press. Now, I don't recall that, Power 96, but I wouldn't doubt that you're right. I wouldn't doubt it at all. Mike V says, I would say the Democratic Party have a difficult time understanding micro-targeting Black male voters. The reproductive rights tour targets women. They have yet to have a tour targeting Black men. An extremely fair point. Extremely accurate point. With the amount of money that they have raised, in fact, the Oprah Winfrey segment last week, in 1 hour, they raised $100 million. With the type of money they raised, they don't have to worry about, okay, let's back down or let's pull back on the reproductive rights tour so we can concentrate on. No, they have the type of resources they can push hard, just as hard for each at the same time. But again, Power 96, that's 100%. Don't be mad if someone doesn't reach out to you. You have to go for it. Again, look, don't always agree with the great Roland Martin, but we are all human. We're not always going to agree. But I do 1,000% applaud and support. And Roland, by the way, just got elected into a Radio Hall of Fame down south last week. Congratulations to Roland Martin. But I am of the same mindset of Roland. Roland is going to be at your door when you wake up. He's going to be at your breakfast table. He's going to be there when you say goodnight. And he's going to be in your face. And he gets things done. Roland, we was in Chicago, and he flew out to Florida and came back. He had a speaking engagement. I'm pretty sure, and it's none of my business, but I'm pretty sure it was all about the bottom line. It was that somebody was kicking out some dough to Roland, because Roland is a businessman too. He's a very good businessman, and this is how we have to be. That is called aggressive. At the Democratic National Convention, and Roland turns the reins over of his show over to someone else, so he can go take care of some other business. That is that's taking care of business, taking charge. That's being aggressive. That's being, hey, we are Black owned, and so we have to be 25 times more aggressive than everybody else. Power 96 says the vice president did come to the Black Male Summit in Atlanta. She did address Black boys and men. He was there. The mainstream media did little coverage. And that is part of the point we're talking about here. We've talked about that too. She's had speeches and rallies that they would not cover, where every single Trump speech and rally they cover in its entirety, almost all the time. They cut away programming to go to a Trump rally. They have not done that for the vice president. But see, at the same time, you have to draw a line. You have to decide what is important. And Donald Trump has been fighting tooth and nail in his own weird way for the Black vote, particularly Black male. He's targeted, let's be clear, he's targeted Black male voters. And when you read a story like this and notice, N-O-T-U-S, and recognize the facts in that story, are they going to die on the hill of we're just not going to do stuff with Black-owned media and Black entities? Are they really going down that path? Because I mentioned too, again, not to continue to bring his name into it, I mentioned Roland going strong for the vice president over her opponent. And maybe that is taken for granted. Maybe they see that as, okay, we don't really have to do a lot of spending with them because they're going to support us anyway. And see, that's the attitude that has gotten some African Americans, when you hear them talk, opposing Democrats. So when you hear like, okay, they are supporting Trump, it's not necessarily that they're supporting Trump. They're just not going to support the Democratic ticket anymore because of this type of behavior by the Democrats. And the story says that there are folks in that campaign that deliberately ignore the Black voice, whether it's Black media or other entities. So Mike V is asking a good question, and this is an answer that notice that they can't get either. But everybody seems to acknowledge that it's just not going to reach the levels at this rate that it did in 2020. He says, what's the percentage of spending that is done on Black-owned media from a campaign perspective? Jamie Harrison, Power 96 says, needs a reality check. He's a Black man in charge of the DNC. And this is again, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, as they say, but listen, sometimes we are our own worst enemies. Yes, Jamie Harrison does need a reality check. Yes, Mignon Moore probably needs a reality check. Quentin Folks, yes, probably needs a reality check. The vice president probably needs a reality check. She needs to be brought up to speed. And she needs to act. She needs to say, hey, listen, this is my campaign. Because the last thing that I'm sure she wants to hear the day after the election, if she loses, if only we had done more with Black-owned media, if only we had done more with Black folks. That's the last thing she wants to do. I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure. David Youngbrother says, we are the divine nine when talking about the money spent on Black media that they raise. So that's the problem too, David, I believe. Now, this is not written here, but I believe that the celebration of the funds raised, because and listen, we've talked about it. I've talked about when they raise the funds. Oh, wow, record breaking. Everyone is cheering that. Everyone is being amazed by it. But at the end of the day, no one is saying, where's it going? What's he going to do with it? At the end of the day, they're going to end. I had to say that because it's the most ridiculous quote I've ever heard. But that is the question, David. No one's asking that question. And they don't see, and this is part and parcel of the problem. So the vice president did the NABJ panel last week. But she's not sitting down with Black-owned media. NABJ had one person on that panel from a Black-owned media entity. The other two are from mainstream media. They're Black, but they're from mainstream media. See, there's a big difference between Black-owned and Black-targeted. Huge difference. They have repeatedly ignored or given us the, yes, we're trying to make it happen type thing with a sit down with the vice president. Now, it was a lot easier when she was not the candidate. Because again, we always give her props. She made space for the Black press as vice president. And yes, she's still vice president, but she's the candidate for president. But they have not, starting with the Black Press's NMPA's convention in Baltimore, where we were told that her and or the president was going to appear. We wound up getting a letter from the vice president and not an appearance. And lo and behold, come to find out that she was in the Baltimore area, where we were. That weekend, she was in the Baltimore area. That is a big slap in the face. Again, we can celebrate you, but we also, this is what I always say, you got to be honest with family, friends, and everybody else. We've talked a lot on this program about how this administration, what they have done for Black America. And the access for the Black press is unprecedented. They've given us unprecedented access to the White House, to other functions, to other entities that are related to the White House. But what they have not done Still the treatment has not rose to the level of what they have done for mainstream media, even though mainstream media continues to stab them in the back over and over and over again, continues to not bring their messaging in a way that they should, just in an honest way and in a fair way. We're not trying to give up any type of journalistic integrity. We will be fair. We've always been fair, and we've always been the trusted voice, and we plan to continue to do that. So that's where we will leave it this morning, folks. And we appreciate you all. Continue to support the Black press. Continue to support Let It Be Known, if nothing else. Hit subscribe. Tell your friends and family to subscribe to our YouTube page. We'll bring you some more news tomorrow. Thanks for watching.